Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very special event here in the city of Peekskill. For those of you who don't recognize where we are, we're here in the entranceway to Fort Hill Park, the city portion. That's going to get very much expanded in a few minutes. And I can just say that this is probably one of the most exciting days I've been able to have as mayor in the city of Peekskill. When I became a councilman in 1998, and discovered that there was a project planned for this hill here, for this historic site. And we're going to learn more about the historic aspects of this from our historian, John Curran, in a minute. But when I heard that and saw that there was an approved plan to build what would be a decimating project on this hill to destroy a national historic spot, I became very concerned. And was one of the reasons, quite frankly, that I decided to run for mayor, was to work to preserve this property. And today we're going to be able to do that, and it's a real pleasure for me to be able to do that. We're joined by a lot of people here who feel the same way. We have our county executive here, Andy Spano. I want to thank him for being here. He'll be saying a few words in a minute. We also have Martin Ginsberg, who is the one giving the gift today, which we're very excited about. We have George Oros, from our representative on the county legislature. Board of Legislators is here. We have Deputy Mayor Pisani here. We have council people Mary Foster and Drew Claxton here. We have our city historian, John Curran. And we have Milagros Martinez from the council here as well. As I was saying before, this is a very important day because of the historical nature of this site. We've been able to do a lot of things over the last 5 or 6 years. The county executive has come here to help us restore parks and open up baseball fields, and We've had Martin here with some very important projects throughout the city that he's been a part of, all things that has transformed our city, enabled us to have the recreation facilities, to have the revenue, to have a 0% tax increase the last couple of years, to bring new people to live to Peekskill and bring a new vitality to the downtown. But I don't think any of them have been more exciting for me personally than today. And as you will hear, the historic nature of this site is really a part of the nature of the formation of our country. Really happened here, and Peekskill was in the center of that. Before West Point was open, Peekskill was the center of the Revolutionary War activity for the American soldiers here in the development of the Continental Army. And you see me, no, I didn't rent this uniform for today. Please don't call it a costume, because then I will have to go to my car and get my musket out. This is a uniform that is a depiction of the 1st New York Regiment, which was a part of the defense of Peekskill. This whole hill behind us, if you were here 220, 30 years ago, you would have seen no trees here. You would have seen barracks, you would have seen readouts, and you would have seen a lot of activity. Some of it you could read about in the accounts of George Washington himself. Alexander Hamilton, who was his aide-de-camp, made a lot of references to Peekskill in his writings. And even some of the diaries of some of the soldiers, Joseph Plum Martin, you might have read Private Yankee Doodle. That book also mentions this site and some of the activity that happened here. So I'm very proud to be able to stand here today with members of the council and other guests, important guests here, to be able to tell the community of the city of Peekskill that we're going to be preserving this 40 acres thanks to the Ginsberg Corporation, and to have a partnership, again, to move Peekskill in the right direction and have 40 acres of preserved historic parkland, which we're very excited about. So I want to thank all those who are here. And before we get into some of the comments of our dignitaries, I want to have John Curran, our city historian, come up and give a brief perspective of the historical nature of this site.
Oops, there's a step there. Thank you, John. I appreciate you introducing the topic as you did. Too often Peekskill has been ignored and misunderstood in the history of the Revolutionary War, and therefore within our national history. After the Battle of White Plains, which was inconclusive, the entire American Army withdrew into defensive lines in the Hudson Valley. Peekskill became that center point of that defensive line. The main base camp, the main headquarters, the main supply depots were all located in the tiny little settlement at that time. Because it was as important as it was well appreciated by the enemy at that time, which was the British military, then based in New York City. The first opportunity that was available to them, to the British forces, in the early spring of 1777, when the American forces stationed on this hill, parts of 2 Continental Army regiments were at their lowest physical numbers and strength. So you have the British taking advantage of the American weakness. They did form on an opposing hill and then essentially did overrun this hill. The Americans who were stationed on the top of the Fort Hill withdrew slightly north and then later came back the next day with a dramatic counterattack. The point being the consequences of this action were dramatic. They were immediately relayed to the Commander-in-Chief, to General Washington. He was startled because he had established the lower Hudson Valley as the main bulwark, the defensive position against the British, and also it was really the only thing left to defend as far as the Americans were concerned. So what he did, first of all, was replace the general in charge. General McDougall was replaced by Israel Putnam. And also, Washington said it's very important to fortify the valley, and that's what led to building the first chain, the defensive iron link chain, basically from Bear Mountain to Anthony's Nose. And an inspection team was also sent through the valley to put up other fortifications, and so on and so on. I'm trying to really summarize this as quickly as I can because there's so many details it's easy to get lost in the overall story. But the point being, essentially, Peekskill was part of the creation of the nation. And if we weren't here, if we didn't do the things that those people did back then, we would be living a different kind of life in this country. I think that's essentially what the truth comes down to, and why this historical topic, that historical era, and why this site is important. And we thank, and we should show some gratitude to the people doing what they're doing in enhancing and expanding this park today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And it is a very extensive history, and it's hard to do it in a short amount of time. So he has some other materials I brought from my personal collection. The Gentleman's Magazine from 1777, which has the accounts of when the British came and burned Peekskill. This will be available for those who come to the reception at City Hall afterwards to look at. And it is an important history to understand. The next person I'd like to have come up and say a few words is the person who is dedicating this property to the city. And Martin Ginsberg and the Ginsberg Development Corporation have come to Peekskill a number of years ago and put together some very important initiatives and projects that has really put Peekskill on the map, starting with the Chapel Hill project and the Riverbend project, and now we're moving forward with the waterfront. And now to have the Abbey project, which I'm sure Martin will talk about more extensively, which will help preserve not only the property he's dedicating to the city, but also preserve some of the historical structures as he did at Chapel Hill. So I want to thank Martin Ginsberg and the Ginsberg Development Corporation for their dedication to Peekskill, for coming to Peekskill in the first place and giving us a chance and really making Peekskill a different place and a better place. So Martin, thank you very much.
I want to thank General Testa for that wonderful introduction. I want to tell you a little bit about how we got to this point. We started by negotiating the purchase of the St. Mary's site, and that's the site we now call the Abbey. At that time, we became aware of a 47-acre development project that actually was adjoining the St. Mary's site. And we were aware that this was hotly contested and that the major obstacle had apparently been a contested access road to that site. Well, we believed we could provide access to that site from the St. Mary's property. So we obtained a site plan for the site, and as the mayor has already referred to that development, we thought it would be very destructive of a very significant site. But we still contracted to buy that site, and by our buying that site, we eliminated the threat of a poorly conceived development. It would be poorly conceived to us and obviously to the city. Now, as we developed our Abbey plans, we decided to only use a very small portion of the 47 acres, around 7 acres. And that 7 acres became part of the Abbey development plans. Now, the Abbey itself was really quite a challenge. It involved the preservation of the chapel and the convent buildings, and the site itself was and is quite a challenge. It's really a woodsy, rocky knoll site. Now, we've had a lot of experience developing difficult sites, and we currently believe that after numerous revisions, we have developed a wonderful master plan. And with skillful and careful execution, we believe the Abbey can be one of the finest communities we've ever developed. And that is not to take anything away from Chapel Hill or our Riverbend communities. Now, over the last 2 decades, I and GDC have donated or bargain sold over 4,600 acres of land. But we consider no donation more significant than the 40 acres that will become part of the Fort Hill Park. And the size of Fort Hill Park will be increased around 5-fold, and with it, the beauty and the history of this part of Peekskill will be preserved for posterity. And I'm also very sure that the residents of the Abbey will be in the forefront of joining its neighbors and assuring its preservation. In addition to the donation of land, GDC is also donating $32,500 towards park improvements. There's a lot more that can be done, and I'm sure will be done over time. Now, we believe in Peekskill. We believe Peekskill has a very bright future. It is certainly one of the most significant Hudson River towns, and it is our sincere hope to play a significant role in helping Peekskill achieve its potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Yes, the Ginsburg Corporation has a history of doing these types of things, but in a city only 4.5 square miles to have 40 acres in one fell swoop being dedicated as parkland, I think is very significant in itself. And if it wasn't for Martin and the Ginsburg Corporation and having that philosophy as a company, we wouldn't be here today. So I want to thank him again. Another person who has been a big part of Peekskill's renaissance and has helped us in many, many projects is the county executive, Andy Spano. He comes here often, and he always comes here as a friend to help us with one thing or another, to help us dedicate a park, to restore an area of recreation, or as he did with the Peekskill Stadium, come and help us dedicate a brand new facility. So for him to be here today is very special, and there is a county collaboration with this project as well, and I want to welcome our county executive, Andy Spano.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking at his uniform since I came, and I keep saying to myself, now, would I wear a uniform like that if I was doing it? And I say, you know, it's really terrific because he takes real pride, and not only in the history, but in the city itself. It's been a pleasure to come up here and work with Peekskill. There's never been a question of whether it was Democrat or Republican, at least when we've been dealing on these projects. This is very special. I've been following Marty around the whole county. He does things like this throughout this county and a few other counties, by the way, not just here. He has a significant interest in not only constructing what I think are some of the best housing stock, you know, that you can get, but also in preserving the quality of life around the area. And this donation today is very significant. I'm a teacher of history, and I love history. And, you know, Westchester was the most fought over battlefield in the Revolution, so it's not insignificant, the history of this particular place. And to have the open space, which is also one of our priorities, I mean, it's a win-win situation for everybody. And I want to congratulate everyone involved. I can't do it today, but I'm going to come back and I want to take a walk over to the yeah, well, it's a little cool. Take a walk over to the other side. But congratulations.
I think that's a great point, to actually come here and actually walk the site. You'll see how beautiful it is, especially in the fall when the leaves start to change and you lose some of the foliage, and you can see out to the Hudson River, and you can understand why this site was so important to the Continentals at that time. And let me tell you, as someone who has spent the last 35 years in historic sites from Canada to Yorktown, Virginia, from the East Coast out to Ohio, this is going to be a very significant addition to those reenactors and those interested in Revolutionary War history. It's going to play an important part of the tourism aspect we've been trying to promote for Peekskill. We have so many eras of history that we depict here, from the Lincoln train station to other sites. This is going to be a site that people are going to want to come and see for the historical nature of it. So I'm excited to be a part of that as well. Another person who has been a very big part of helping us with all the projects, county connected, bringing us the most in the CDBG funding of any municipality in the county, far more than our fair share, I might say, and someone who's been a big supporter of all our initiatives, and that's our county legislator, George Oros.
About vision and people that have a vision, from Martin Ginsburg and Ginsburg Development Group, who, when they come to a community, they don't come to take, they don't come to just build, they come with a vision that's long range, not just to make a quick profit and get out, but what would help the community grow and preserve or enhance the quality of life. I think our county executive exhibits that sort of vision too. The legacy program, and we talked about the ball field down on Louisa Street there. We dedicated a spray park back in July. The partnership between the county and the city, as well as the partnerships that we have with private developers and private industry, are so key to a community. Preservation, parks, open space, any of those things we all know cannot be done without partnerships. The cost and the work and the effort to achieve any of that has to go beyond the city borders. It has to go beyond the borders of government, and it has to be a partnership both on intermunicipal levels as well as with private sector. And so I think that the vision exhibited by our mayor here in Peekskill, he alluded to the fact when he became a councilman wanting to preserve this space here, and having that vision and carrying it forward and finding partners that share that vision and carry it forward, I think is a testament to Mayor Testa, to Mr. Ginsburg, to our county executive, and to this community up here who stood side by side and worked together. So I'm proud to have played a very small part in this and be here today, and to thank particularly Ginsburg Development and Martin Ginsburg, but also the county and our county executive, and certainly to Mayor Testa and the City Council for the terrific job they've done on this Fort Hill project. Thank you.
Thanks, George. And it's been alluded to by George and others that this is a collaborative effort. As I said back when I was a council person and really felt that something needed to be done to preserve this property, there were others in the community who felt the same way. And as was said also, a bipartisan effort, or all walks of life, all people interested in history and preserving Peekskill's history. Was not a political issue. It was really a gut issue that people had, that they knew that this had to be preserved, that this area had to be established as parkland. And a group that formed, I think part of the reason they formed was this project and this piece of land, and that's the Historic Peekskill Inc. Organization that did come together as part of trying to help preserve this property, and I was proud to stand side by side with them throughout the whole point of trying to first prevent that project that ill-conceived project that Martin mentioned before, and then again to move forward and try to find a way. And we tried many different ways of getting the money to purchase the land ourselves. We just could not end up getting that funding together. A lot of things, we thought we were on the brink a few times and it fell apart. But the Friends of Historic Peekskill, now the Historic Peekskill Inc. people, were right there, or a big part of it. And we have a representative here today, Kathy Soretta. I'd like to invite her up to say a few words as well.
Thank you. I'm here with my husband, Rick Soretta. We're founding members of Friends of Historic Peekskill, which was formed in 1997, and that's the forerunner of Historic Peekskill Inc. And Friends of Historic Peekskill was founded on preserving Peekskill's historic assets and green space, and most especially to save Fort Hill Park. And it was through the vision of then Mayor Fran Gibbs and now Mayor John Testa and their administrators. It was wonderful to work with them. Mayor Testa has shown up in uniform many times with the members of the Brigade of the American Revolution to help support our efforts. And everyone you see here behind me has also supported us over the years. And I wanted to say that on behalf of the founding members of Friends of Historic Peekskill, the members of Historic Peekskill, and the hundreds of people that helped us both in time, effort, and funding. We want to say thank you so much to the administrations that have made this, this day possible. It's wonderful, and to tell everybody that Fort Hill Park is saved. 10 years of very hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. And one last group that needs to have representation here today as well. As you could tell, we're in the area known as Fort Hill area, or the Nelson Avenue area, as some call it. But there's a homeowners alliance here called the Fort Hill Homeowners Alliance, and they use that term because they were also, all the people who live in this general area of town were very concerned for this public area as well. And they were very concerned about it not being developed for various reasons, as well as preserved for the important reasons. And we were very proud, and I know the Ginsburg Corporation worked very closely with the neighborhood to work out the layout of this project for the part that is going to be developed as a pragmatic way of making this happen. And I want to thank them, first of all, as the mayor, for being an involved group and for helping us get to this point. But I also want to have someone from the group say a few words. That's Gene Panchenko. Gene?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've always thought that Fort Hill was one of the best-kept secrets in Peekskill, and we really treated it as our own little getaway. It was a great place to come and listen to the frogs, to take photographs, to walk your dog, and we kind of embraced it. With we would conduct yearly cleanups, and when we heard about this first development that was going to pepper the hill with little boxes, we grouped together and we fought it as hard as we could. And then later on, when we heard about Mr. Ginsburg's proposal to preserve most of the land for a public space, that's what kind of won us over. It's a win-win situation for the neighborhood and for development. And I'd like to thank everybody. There's like so many people to thank, but it's great that we all came together. It's now done, and we can all rest and move on to the next thing. So thank you very much.
Well, again, just in closing, I'd just like to thank everyone involved. I want to thank the City Hall staff for helping us get this together for today, and all the hard work they did to get all the legal documents together that needed to get together for this as well. Took a lot of work, took a long time to get everything right. And as was said, a lot of people had a part of it. The City Council supported it right from the beginning, which was a very important unanimous aspect of this as well. It was a full council support, which was great, and something we can all be proud of in the future. And we can come back here with our grandchildren, and some of us already have grandchildren. I don't have any yet. You can come up here and say, you know, we were a part together of preserving this historic area. And when we come back up here, and I believe down the road there will be people coming here for many, many years to come to see where our country was formed and a little bit of what Peekskill did for this development of the United States. So I'm very proud of it. We're going to have a little ceremony to cut the ribbon, and then we're going to all gather down in the rotunda of City Hall for a little reception, so you're all welcome to come. So thank you very much for being here. I'm joined by Martin Ginsberg again, who has been the generous gift giver to the city of Peekskill. And Martin, I just want to say thank you again from the citizens of the city of Peekskill. We've tried for many years to preserve this property, but without your involvement, it would never have happened, so I want to thank you for that.
Well, it's really my pleasure. I recognize the importance of this site, and you know, it's something that I personally and my company have always focused on whenever we have an opportunity to do something as significant as this, that we want to be able to do it. And in this particular case, it really would have been a disaster. It isn't like this would have been really totally devastating, a significant piece of Peekskill's history and the nation's history. So we really are thrilled that we're able to play this part now.
Well, I'm glad. And as you mentioned earlier, the project that will be as part of the St. Mary's project, the Abbey, the preservation doesn't stop with the land. It also has the historic buildings. I know at Chapel Hill, you came in at a time when, again, another important project, another concern I had about the chapel itself. Chapel Hill without a chapel would have been a silly notion. That was a historic building. You came in and you saw the significance of it, as well as another building, which I'll let you mention, and you put in a significant investment to make that a restored, beautiful building.
Well, history, you know, you can't replace when you lose a significant part of history. With Chapel Hill, unfortunately, the prior developer had actually gone through pains to destroy the building, so we really had a building that was in terrible shape, and we had to invest over $3.5 million to really restore the building and to make it into what it is now, which is really a wonderful place for all the residents to enjoy, and it's become a meeting place for the city of Peekskill as well. And one of the things that was never part of the plans was to save St. Germain's, which was the old school building adjoining the chapel. But when we saw the two buildings, we saw that you really had to save both buildings, or the chapel would have been diminished, because they were designed together and they had to be preserved. So we also saved St. Germain's, and now we're confronted with a very similar situation here on the Abbey, in that we have a wonderful chapel, and this one has not been destroyed, so we hope it'll be a little bit easier to preserve, and as well as the convent building. And this is a challenge, and you know, we'll respond to it. It's going to be, it enhances the overall development when you preserve the history, and that's what we're going to do.
It's wonderful that you're doing that, and what people need to understand, especially the new people of Peekskill, you mentioned 3 projects that you're involved with, the one that you completed, 2 that you completed, Chapel Hill and the Riverbend project, both on former convent property, and now a third one on a property that was owned by the sisters here at St. Mary's. 3 major properties, 3 beautiful properties in Peekskill that were never on the tax rolls. And when you think about how development really brings this kind of revenue to the city, and you've helped us tremendously in that regard, but you've also helped bring people to the city. That is what the Vitality needs for the downtown. The revitalization of a city has a lot of aspects to it, and what you've been able to do for Peekskill has been tremendous, and I'm really, really happy that we had this partnership. We still have more to do, and you can elaborate on that if you like, but I really want to thank you for everything you've done for the city.
Well, Mayor, I appreciate your support as always. I think I cannot do anything if we don't have the support of the government, and if we don't have a common vision, and I think we share a vision. Our vision is to do wonderful developments that enhance the community and help support the overall vision of the community. And we think that Peekskill has a wonderful future. It has a tremendous waterfront. It is potentially a major focal point on the Hudson River. And it has history, it has beauty, and we're thrilled to be able to play a role in helping make that happen.
Well, we're all looking forward to it, and thank you again.